could you please tell us the mood in Tehran, especially for the past 48 hours, now that the whole narrative and the whole puzzle of the attempted regime coup operation is put in place? And now I'm sure the intelligence all across Iran know exactly what happened. So give us
Mm,
the feeling on the
yeah.
ground about it, please.
Yeah, it's so calm here. No protests, Pepe. It's not just in the last 48 hours, in the last 4 days, 3 days, we haven't had any sort of protests, riots. And, the core issue with these riots was the internet connection, Pepe.
Mm, mm.
The internet connection, they have infiltrated the protests. They were using people from coming from outside and from within Pepe. Here we have something about 15 million Afghani people. I'm not putting blame on these people, but most of them
Is it
undocumented people.
15 million?
Yeah, 12 to 15 million.
Yes, I mean,
Just imagine
last number that
a
I have
country
of
with 91
that,
million. It's more than 10% of the you know, you mostly undocumented,
yeah, of
and it's
course.
so difficult for the security forces to control that and putting all together with the information, disinformation, fake news all coming together. And you see in these protests, peaceful protests, for the first 2 days, Pepe, there was no violence happening. They thought that these protests, the government gonna react, they're gonna react hard, they're gonna beat the protesters, but that didn't happen. So they turned the protests into riots. There were people within the protesters shooting at both the people, the protesters, and the security forces.
Hmm.
It's all about, for those people who are familiar with Maidan and what has happened in Maidan, it's all over again.
Hmm.
You see the same sort of scenario happening here. And but I can say that in the last 4 days, and there is nothing happening since the connection, you know in the internet was cut off. We had the protests disappeared, and we don't have the protests. People are just living their lives, and it seems that nothing has happened. And but from the outside, looking at the outside, they say, you know they're gonna, the whole rhetoric with the Trump attack on Iran was they want to kill more than 800 people and something like that. It was amazing that, it's all coming from the outside. Nothing is happening from the inside.
Of course, yeah.
This is amazing. What it was happening from the inside was these people who came, infiltrated the protests, who tried to use the ordinary people to do, they were somehow, the management was from outside. The Starlink was the core to what was happening here in Iran. The arms coming from the outside. You see here in Iran, you are not you cannot have an arm. It's
Hmm.
forbidden to have an arm here. It's not like the United States. You can buy any sort of arm on,
Hmm.
but here, everything. When someone comes out and shooting at the people, at the security forces using the guns, these, sort of, professional guns, and you see this is not from inside.
Hmm.
And the other thing, Pepe, that was unbelievable. I have never seen, I have never heard, I have, because, and the Green Movement. You remember the Green Movement
Of
during
course.
those days? Yeah, during those days, uh, you know, the situation was somehow different. But we have all the history of the movement of these sort of protests, these sort of riots here in Iran. We have never seen beheading people, putting people into the fire, live people. To- it's setting people. It's unbelievable what has happened. Beheading people. It's something you can. I can say that It's not coming from the Iranian society. It's not
Of
an
course,
Iranian sort of attitude. It's coming from the outside. It's a Daesh sort of attitude.
absolutely. They import
Nobody believed that.
ISIS cells. Of course. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
They have infiltrated. Here is the issue, Pepe. Here is the issue. I think that's coming from Syria. That's coming from total chaos in Syria and all coming to the Central Asia. These people, radical, mostly Salafi, jihadi people, and they have managed to come in Iran, to convince some people in Iran who are somehow, the rhetoric resonates with these people in Iran. I don't know who are these people. We still don't have the information. The government didn't publish. You
mhm.
know, we don't know what was happening, but I can tell from the pictures, from the footages, from the images that I've seen so far, this wasn't Iranian
Of
protest.
course. Mm.
This wasn't Iranian protest. It was totally managed from the outside. It was what was the difference from what we've seen so far from the other protests and riots in the past, that the monarchs, the people who are supporting the son of the Shah of Iran, they were not cooperating with Israel before,
Mhm.
as obvious as we see right now.
Mm.
But today, with these protests, you see they are, you know, clearly cooperating with Israelis, with the Mossad, to do everything, to use their leverage, you know, and that was one of the major issues here, because the people, this guy is the son of the Shah. Why is he doing this? He wasn't like this before. If he was behind the scene.
No,
It
no, no.
was
He was
not
he
this
was
much obvious.
he was lavishly paid to do that, Nima. He was recontacted and reworked by CIA and NED with the help of Mossad, of course. The Israelis were as an intel operation. He was one of the key uh, planks of the whole intel operation, with this reactivation of Daesh, ISIS, and cells infiltrated especially in the eastern part of Iran via Afghanistan. People who cross the border, as you know very well, that border, the Afghan Iranian border, is extremely porous. Everybody can cross that border. So all of this makes sense in terms of how they organized the operation. And of course, when I start looking at the images, I was immediately reminded of a color revolution that I was there in Hong Kong in 2019. Exactly the same modus operandi. The only difference is that at the time, these people were coordinated by the gigantic, sprawling uh, American embassy in Hong Kong. This time it's different. This time it was more fragmented and diffuse. It was controlled by these cells a little bit everywhere who were passing information via Starlink exactly to the killers, to the beheaders, to the ISIS dash linked mini cells, etc. But the modus operandi is the same that they used in Hong Kong, which is in a very sophisticated society. And because Iran is much bigger and more fragmented, it was even easier to infiltrate. And they infiltrated in different areas of Iran, like in Khuzestan, where you were 2 weeks ago, right? Like in Iraqi Kurdistan, in Iran, Kurdistan, near Iraq. It's much easier to infiltrate these borders. And of course, in the east with the Afghan border. But the thing is, it was diffused relatively fast, don't you
Mm.
think? It took
Yeah,
basically 1 week
exactly.
to
Exactly.
get the head of all the snakes involved. But I have another question for you, Nima, in two parts. One, the exchange rate of the real vis-a-vis the dollar.
Yeah.
The way I analyzed it, the key element to destabilize Iran and force these economic protests was a speculative attack on the
Mm.
real that lasted for
Yeah.
a few days, and the currency completely collapsed. So my question to you is the exchange rate now back to what it was before the protests? Is it stagnated? Is it still going down? Where is it now?
It's just hitting some sort of, is stagnation, because it's not going up and down. But
Mm.
what the government is trying to do, Pepe, they have tried to, you know, as you've mentioned, the it wasn't something happening from inside, Pepe. It
Sure.
wasn't something, drastically a drastic change in the attitude of the government, or some sort of, shortage of a single product, many products, or it wasn't this. It was some sort of propaganda. It was some sort of, the pressure coming from the outside. I don't know how th- they could do that. The government may, study that, what was happening,
But
because it wasn't happening overnight, Pepe. It was
it was
happening
not
during
overnight.
a short period of
It
time.
was an attack against the currency that started weeks ago. So people start immediately seeing their spending power diminishing in front of their eyes. So that was the key main reason for those initial protests against, the fall of their living standards, spending power, inflation in front of them. Uh, going to the grocery shop and you're paying almost double what you paid a few days before. So
Yeah.
this works in every attempt at regime change. So that's why I
Yeah.
ask this question. If things now are starting to be more normalized, still the real vis-a-vis the dollar, we all know it's worth literally nothing. But a few weeks ago, it
Yeah.
was less than nothing. And that prompted the first uh, protests.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, Real is not doing great. By the way, I can say
It
that.
never is.
But
Man. It never is. You know that
yeah,
my favorite meter, yeah, when I am in Iran, Nima, I go in front
yeah,
of the Grand Bazaar and I talk to the money sellers. That's when you get the feeling of real life in Tehran. And I'm sure these guys a few weeks ago they were already looking at the real going down like big time, much harder than before. And they said, "Oops, there is something's going to happen." They are the first ones who pick up this you know this vibe. But okay, Nima, one thing, my column was just published by Strategic Culture. I wonder if you could put it on the screen, because in this column I try to put this all together. The reasons
yeah,
for this American obsession with regime change in Iran, which is something that's been going on for over 4 decades. Whoever is in power in the White House doesn't matter. It's a bipartisan issue. How this is going to continue, even though this current attempt at regime change failed completely, but it will continue. And of course, the possibility of another stupid attack on Iran, considering that Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier, just crossed the Malacca Strait, is on the way, and it might get to the Sea of Oman and the Persian Gulf by the end of this week. So this will give extra, let's say, extra poison in terms of the Neo Caligula in Mar-a-Lago, Washington, that axis, trying to have ideas. But I also explain why there was not an armed attack on Iran this time. All that bullshit about the Gulfies, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman, especially, picking up the phone, calling the White House, and say, "Don't do this because this is going to turn the Persian Gulf into a ring of fire, or is going to generate blowback and all that." This is not the real issue, nor was Tel Aviv picking up the phone and calling Moscow to tell the Iranians via the Russians, look, we're not going to strike first if Iran doesn't strike first. This is all diversionist tactic. The real issue is the United States didn't have enough assets around Iran in all those bases in the Persian Gulf, whatever, for a super hardcore shock and awe strike, which this time would be a decapitation strike, even including Ayatollah Khamenei and probably the whole government, the whole of IRGC, you name it. They didn't have the assets in place. So this means that when they have the assets in place, this will be a possible scenario. So probably not going to be within this week or so. It could be in a matter of 2 or 3 months, but they will come back. There's no question about that. And the main reason is I would like to have your insight about that specifically. It's because the Trump 2.0 administration and the elites behind, the guys who run the show, and this is a bipartisan issue, and it's over the bipartisan connection. They finally figured out, and this is something that we can say was a few months ago already, and it's also reflected in the national security strategy, that the empire of, as I describe it now, the empire of chaos, then metastasized into the empire of blood, and now metastasized into the empire of permanent strikes against anybody, right? They finally came to the conclusion that they are being expelled from Eurasia, essentially by Russia and China. And there is nothing they can do about it, apart from trying to dismember Eurasia organicity and their drive towards establishing a multipolar, multinodal new system of international relations, blowing up BRICS and the SCO from inside. And what does that mean? A direct attack on Iran, incapacitating Iran, decapitating Iran, and turning Iran to the Western camp, let's put it this way, would be NATO stunned, but especially the empire, and trying to turn Iran into a sort of new Venezuela, which, by the way, there's not there has not been any regime change in Venezuela. So even if they tried this Iran, there's no guarantee that they would get regime change in Iran. But psychosis, Nima, and all of you, our audience, is still there. The only chance that they have of not being expelled from Eurasia and from this constitution of the new Eurasian century is if they break up this organization of Eurasia from the inside. And that means an attack on Iran.
Yeah. Pepe, you know what's tragic about being in Iran and seeing what has happened is that the people were criticizing the government for their decision, for considering the economy, the difficulties they're facing. But it was tragic to see, they don't let the people, even with the economy, with the problems they're facing, to put pressure on the government to have the legitimate, i- right to ask the government to change the policies considering the economy of Iran.
Mm,
They, every time someone says something, they just trying to ruin everything. That's why this is the problem. Many people don't understand it. You have to be in Iran to feel how they manipulate everything. They don't let people to use their rights, to ask the government, to criticize the government. Every time a protest happening, they try to turn it into a riot. They're trying to kill people. They're trying
mm,
to burn things here.
mm,
This is a tragedy, and we know what is happening. We know what has happened for such a long time all around Iran. Considering all, going to to Armenia, Azerbaijan, coming, to Iraq, Afghanistan, Even with the case of Pakistan, you see all together, they have created such a situation in Iran that the government has no choice but to, to monitor everything, because that takes a lot of time, huge amount of money, a lot of, effort to do such a thing when you are attacked from every, you know,
Every
angle.
different all
This
front.
is the problem.
Nima,
Just imagine the
yeah.
same happening to the United States, the greatest, as they call it, the greatest superpower on this planet. They cannot survive such a situation, and they're putting all this pressure on Iran and Iranian society, Iranian government.
Nima, very important. Did you feel that the government was trying to explain to the average Iranian, to the general population, the reasons for the current economic crisis? Were they talking, for instance, about a speculative attack on the real? Were they talking about this maximum pressure of sanctions everywhere? Did they try to explain to the population why, for instance, the cost of living was going up and up and up nonstop?
Yeah. What was happening during the first 2 days of protest? There was no, the riots didn't happen in those days. Major, we haven't that much of chaos and riots. The Pezeshkian government, they have invited the shopkeepers, many people who are the economists, all together, talking with the presidents, with the various institutions within the government, describing the difficulties and trying to solve, cooperate with these people. What was happening? They were trying to do something together with the economists, with the shopkeepers, with the people involved in, as they call it, bazaar here.
Sure.
And when they perceived from outside that something is happening that may turn down, that may just make everything, every protest disappeared from the scene, they started this sort of movement.
Mm,
They, you know, they came with a new attitude. They said these people are not part of the chaos came after this meeting,
mm,
Pepe. It
mm,
was so important because the government was so aware of what was happening,
mhm,
and they wanted to do something. They wanted to talk with the people, ordinary people on streets, with this, those people, the higher people, those people who are selling goods to the people.
mm.
And but it was a pre-planned protest, Pepe.
Of
It was
yeah.
all they have been prepared for this. They wanted, they know, Pepe, in my opinion, they know they cannot defeat Iran militarily. They have to make a huge chaos, even with the attack. The
Mm,
American attack on Iran was a huge sort of propaganda machine to convince people to come again to the streets, to make new chaos, to make new riots. It was all about that, because when Donald Trump was asking the people that he's going to attack, I'm going to attack in the next 7 hours, 2 hours, he was literally asking people to come out,
sure.
get the institutions, take over the institutions, take over the government, you know, note the name of those people who are, the security forces. It was all you cannot say that the United States didn't know about it. They were all behind this sort of scenario.
Of course, because they were
They
gonna
were prepared.
see
But
Mossad
it's
and
all,
any
the people came
everything.
out the day that the internet was cut off. The people came out in all major cities here in Iran. The people came out and said, these protests have nothing to do with Iran. And that was the breaking point for the United States strategy here in Iran.
A very tricky question, Nima. Okay, you may have come across maybe some intel information, if you can tell us about it, of course. But would you say that the Rouhani Zarif faction,
Mm.
which, as we all know, is intimately connected to factions in Washington, D.C. and in New York, were they aware of the regime change up? were they collaborating with it, or were they completely outside of the picture?
There is no evidence, there is no piece of information, you know, proving that Rouhani and Zarif was helping these protests,
Mm.
as far as I have seen, and because I haven't seen such a thing, Pepe. There are rumors. I know
There are
there are
rumors,
rumors out.
including that they are under
Yeah,
house arrest, but we couldn't confirm that with anybody. Yes.
because the Pezeshkian, Pepe, let's put it this way: the Pezeshkian government is not a, you know, they have the people who are close to, you know, to the reformists. They
Mhm.
have the people from the center. They have the people from the right, left, all together. It's a government of all these people together. But if there was such a thing as big as what you've just mentioned about Rouhani and Zarif, they would it would be all over the, you know,
Yes,
the
but I'm
internet.
talking especially something made in the shade, very discreet,
Yeah.
but including actual support and even informational support, which is something that the people around Rouhani and Zarif can do because they understand how the machinery of government works as well. They were part of the government before. So, of course,
It's
we all know for the moment it's rumors, but these rumors are starting to become a little more insistent than before. You see?
Yeah, but let's put it this way, Pepe. Last time Zarif was talking at Doha,
Yes.
you saw his performance. He was not the Zarif who was negotiating JCPOA.
No.
Even the Zarif that we saw when this government has started. The initial days, he was trying to do the same. But Zarif has changed his mind, Pepe. After all,
Mm.
Zarif understands. I think he knows the reality of what is happening right now, considering the new geopolitical reality of the region. And he has decided. You can clearly hear him. You can, because last time he was talking to the press was that in Doha,
In Doha.
and he said it loudly that he feels that Iran has decided to go to consider the East is not all about the United States anymore, and
Yeah, that's an
they
enormous
are Iran is seeking for
area.
partnership, and Russia and China are showing the honest partner of Iran. I Since then I haven't heard Zarif talking anything. I don't think that's why I think that Zarif is not. He has made his mind. He has changed. Not only Zarif, many people have changed because the attack on Iran, Israeli attack on Iran, even with the new sort of propaganda that after these sort of riots in Iran, protest riots in Iran, the attack, Donald Trump coming out saying that I'm going to attack. And these people are seeing this. And it's not just about, and they know what's going on. And I cannot imagine without Iran being Iran, as today we see, there is no meaning of Zarif or Rouhani. These people have no meaning without Iran, Pepe. They
Absolutely.
understand that.
Mm.